failures. You don't know when your equipment is going to fail, but it is going to happen at some point in time. And just to kind of go back to what we were talking about with AI, this is this is how you defeat any type of machine type of learning, is that, if it gets to the point where they have their own thing going on, you better hope that the equipment fails, because at the end of the day it is still man-made in some sense, and so it still has to be, it has to come to an end at some point in time. Software vulnerabilities, we can have a good handle over software vulnerabilities, but sometimes we could bring in old software that we're not totally aware about, and bring in the risk that comes in with that. Here's a big one. So non-technical risk like inadequate policies or training. So this is come goes back to the employees that we have. Now, it's not their fault that they may not be tech savvy, or they may not understand the policies. They may not even be into the policies like that, where their job is not really into the policies to where they have to review those things. So I remember working at a TV network, and they had the grounds crew, and the grounds crew, their only job was to clock in every morning and then go and beautify the campus. The thing about that is that they still had to log in on the network, and still had to, have a login and a password, and then go to a particular app that, had their particular information in it. Um, well, they're not going to be totally all up and down in the not the student handbook, but the employee handbook, or how we actually, what's the policies that we have when it comes to cybersecurity or training. They may not even care about the cybersecurity training, the phishing training that we have every month. They're just there to, take care of the yard. Well, if someone's doing any type of reconnaissance, then they could probably look into that to say, okay, what's the odds of someone working just on the yard, and they having a very complex password? I probably stand a good chance of getting their credentials and being able to hack their particular account before I go and get someone of the CFOs. Now let's talk about quantitative and qualitative analysis. So we're talking about let's start with quantitative. Then we're talking about the size. More likely, quantitative is always going to have some type of number attached to it. Um, we're talking about it's affecting 500 users, or if we're talking about the user experience of it affecting 10,000 users, it's probably going to always be some type of quantitative analysis around that. Meaning, we're going to take these 10,000 people and then break it down to what does the actual risk mean for those people individually. Hey, it'll only affect 7,500. Um, you know what? We stand a good chance of having this risk because everyone's protected. That'll be probably 9,200 of us is protected. The other 800 may or may not be attacked. And so that may be a 90% pass rate. We take that as a quantitative analysis. Qualitative is going to be more subject to thought process or how someone feels. So qualitative will be, the quality of the analysis, as far as if we if we become breached in some type of way, if we become hacked, how is it going to be perceived by our audience, by our customers? What's the impact of that? Not necessarily saying that 90% of our users or our customers will now leave us, because once we put that number on it, then it becomes qualitative. But I mean quantitative. But if we put the quality of, hey, they're going to look at us in a negative light, then it's qualitative. The quality of it. Now, when developing a risk assessment, and let's define what a risk assessment is. Sometimes a risk assessment is a list of things that you got, where you list of actions. and you will ask your IT director or IT manager, "Hey, let's go over some things that you got into the company, and let's see exactly how much of a risk do we actually just stand here today." And you can ask things like, what's the policy on passwords? How long are passwords? How long do we keep passwords? To how many firewalls do we have in the network? Um, you can ask things like, what's the latest OS version that we have in the network? Things like that. Sorry, those type of questions is going to allow the IT director as well as the cybersecurity team understand where do we stand at as far as the posture of the cybersecurity program, the IT program as well. So what's the posture? Do we are we standing up straight and proud to where we have things in place, we have processes in place, we have appliances in place, we are ready for an attack, and if we are attacked, we know exactly how to react. Do we know how to be proactive? That's probably going to be a good posture, and those assessments allows you to see if you're in that mode to where you're being able to be proactive. But if you're not, an assessment can now give you a guideline of what do we actually need to do to change those things. How do we get to becoming a better posture type of program? Now, I got here inherent risk, and sometimes when you fix one problem or you fix one risk or mitigate it, you in turn inherit some other risk. So, to give you an example on that is that, hey, we want to protect against malware attacks. Well, we bring in CrowdStrike to do so, but with CrowdStrike having that 0 day the other month ago, or not a month ago, but like 5 months ago, then it inherit the risk that you brung with them into your network. That's just it is what it is on that. And so in the world of security, the best way of security is to be able to lock down everything. Nobody can't do nothing, but that's not productive. And so you want to make sure that you lean on letting people get their job done, but doing it in the most secure way. That's how you're going to be more productive. You won't be always the most secure, but you will be productive, and be able to have some type of balance there. Now, whenever you have those assessments and you're creating what's detrimental, what's critical for us, what are critical processes for the company, you could create these heat maps. And these heat maps are for your regular employees or lower level employees, or maybe even senior all level employees. Let me just put it like that. For all level employees to have a quick look at what is a major impact for us. You can automatically see that red is bad and then yellow is not necessarily great, but we can live with it, right? And so these heat maps allow us to look at it from a security standpoint and say, you know what, we need to work on the RAOs. We need to work on the antiviruses, not on certain PCs. I want to work on legacy Windows. We need to get these out of the system, out of the network. You can look at it and have a better idea of how to tackle certain address certain risks that you have in the company, and then you can eventually turn those triangles into green check marks. But you don't want them to go the opposite way, right? Now, my favorite part about risk management is how we're going to deal with risk. What are we doing once we figure out that we have risk there to um, actually approach and deal with? Do we avoid it? Do we accept it? Do we mitigate it, or do we transfer it? These are going to be your typical risk response. Now, let's go about accepting the risk. If all everything is laid out, and you know what? We just can't change it. We're gonna accept the risk. What do you mean by that? Hey, we built the company in um, Southern California, and we don't have any money to move our offices, and so we're gonna deal with the forest fires. That's just what we're gonna do. We just gotta accept it. The only thing we could do is, if we don't accept all of it, we could try to mitigate some of it. We could even try to transfer it, and I'll get to the transfer in just a minute. But we could try to mitigate it. How do you mitigate forest fires, or the fires that's normally hitting up California like that? Well, we might try to mitigate it by having off uh, might have a cloud instance somewhere else, having that data off site, maybe in a different state, maybe in a different country, and create a whole different division in our company in order to make it not just one stationary place. So we accepted the fact that we're not going to move. We accepted the fact that forest fires is going to happen in California, and we are stationed here. That's just what we're going to do, right? But we also have tried to mitigate the risk, the impact of the risk, by saying, you know what, let's go ahead and let's get a data center in Georgia and put it there, and have people, just in case we need to shut down the office, we can have people still remote into the Georgia all sites, the all site, and continue to work. And we can continue to give our customers the services that they need. So that's accepting slash mitigating. Now, to go and straight mitigate something, this is where we typically are talking about malware, right? Malware, we're going to put in antivirus to mitigate those type of attacks. It won't stop every attack, but it will significantly stop enough attacks to where we can at least accept the risk of it. So going back to our heat map now. So let's say if it's a X mark for antivirus here, and or right here with RAO, annual rate of occurrence. And so if it's there, then we say, okay, let's put in our antivirus. Maybe we can put this X into a caution sign. So now that caution sign may be something that we accept, but it's not necessarily something that we're happy with, but we will accept it. And that's a big thing, is when you're able to, and that goes to our next slide, but I need to go back. When you're able to accept the risk, that's your risk appetite. We can stomach this. We don't want to get hit with that type of risk or that type of results, but if we do, we can recover. We can handle that. So that's mitigating, being able to put something into place, significantly dropping the impact of a risk if it was to happen. Now, transfer. A lot of things, and I haven't really tapped into this measure, but a lot of times when you're talking about transferring risk, you're talking about having insurance. And cyber insurance has been a thing that's been blowing up on the low lately, just because everybody's being hit with um, these doggone breaches, right? And so when you're losing customers' information, you're losing data, and it ends up in a monetary type of number, then we could possibly transfer that to our insurance company, and then we get the money on the back end. Give me one second. And so having that money on the back end, or that coverage, we are taking the risk and saying, you know what, if it does come into fruition, I can always transfer this doggone thing to State Farm, and State Farm's gonna cover me, and we good to go. Now, don't look at it so much as being like, hey, if somebody stole the firewall, the actual appliances, the firewall, the router, that's not gonna really happen like that. But if you get a breach, and someone now, let's say if that ransomware that we was talking about last week, somebody hits you up for 2 Bitcoins and you actually pay it, maybe I can file a report, a policy for that. Go ahead and file a claim for that. I'm sorry, and get my 2 Bitcoins back, maybe. But I'm pretty sure in that policy they're gonna probably say, if it's your fault, on a ransomware, we're not going to give you, not going to honor that policy. So, but that's the thinking of it, that there's a problem, there's a risk, but now I could possibly transfer the problem to someone else, and I can still come away not scathed, because now you still got to look at it like I was still breached. And so how my customers going to really look at me like that after I got breached? But at least I didn't lose any money. Or, if I'm getting sued, then I could possibly take my claim and pay the customers, any type of grievance fee that they have on that. So residual risk is like inherent risk, but it's it's the risk that's left behind after you mitigated some type of implementation in there, right? So we put the antivirus in there, but someone comes out with a 0 day. Well, the antivirus is no good against a 0 day unless it's a behavior type of EDR that looks at, and the thing about an EDR being behavior based is that it looks at what people are doing on a day-to-day basis, and by it learning what's the normal for a business, then it knows what a abnormal um, feature may look like in a business. And so that machine learning there can create some type of protection. Well, going back to residual, if we put that EDR in there and you still have a 0 day, the EDR may not know exactly what is going on. And so now the risk is, it was minimal, but now according to the 0 day, it may be a big thing. So that's residual. That's something that's left over, even though we put something in place for it to be mitigated. And we already talked about risk appetite. Again, that's what do we accept? What do we accept? But even though we didn't totally eliminate the risk. So it's just really the, hey, I'm cool with that, but it, look at it like this. If I always look at it, risk appetite, like if I'm giving out money to borrow or lend out, if I'm okay with lending you $10, $15, I'm cool. That's my risk appetite. And what I mean by that is that I'm cool with you not giving back that 10, $15. If you don't give me that back, I'm cool. I'm cool on that. I don't have a problem with it. I'll probably still give you another 10. But $25, I can't stomach that. I can't, no, that's, it ends at $24. I cannot give you more than $24, because at $25, I refuse to give you any more money. That's my risk appetite stops at $24. You get what I'm saying? So I can't stomach giving you $25 and then you not giving me back my $25. But the 10, the five, $10, yeah, go ahead. Here. I can do that all day. And that's typically what a risk appetite is. It's just, what are we willing to, bat an eye at and just be like, yeah, whatever. And then what other type of risk where if it happens, it's like, oh, wait a minute, hold on now. I can't have that happen. So this goes into the different types of risks that you have, right? So you have these things called registers, and they're no more than just a Excel spreadsheet of the different types of risks that you may have. A risk register may be pages and pages long of the type of things that we may deem to be a threat to the company. It may be, and those forest fires may be on that. Um, Someone shooting up the company may be on that. Someone having a computer having a computer crash or a blue screen of death, that may be on there. And these risk registers pretty much they give the vulnerability, they give how we view that in a risk score, and then they also give like a description of what we deem this risk to be, and then how does it affect us. So you're getting your risk description, your severity, you know. Um, Now the owner of the risk is based off of, the department. And if you have that department person, if you have so many different departments, maybe the physical um the physical aspect of security, when we're talking about a active shooter, that may be the owner of that particular risk may be the person over physical security, right? Versus a ransomware risk may be over by the cybersecurity CISO. So it's two different owners, and they are going to pretty much create the the responses to those risks better than all just one person just kind of saying, you know what, I'm gonna just come up with different types of responses of how I think one should respond to these different types of risks. If I'm really working like um if I'm a web developer, then I should own the risk of buffer overflows. And I should understand how a buffer overflow should work and what we should put in place based off of our condition, our work environment, and base that out, base how we actually mitigate that risk in our environment. So that's what your owner is going to do. They're going to identify these mitigations based off of their experience. All right. And of course, we're going to use those heat maps in order to understand what we're going to tackle. Now, this threshold here needed to be on the risk appetite, but risk threshold is just going to be pretty much going back to lending out $25. That threshold is going to be $24. I can't, it's going to be at that point in time. If I give you $24.50, hey, I'm expecting to see that back. If not, then nah, I can't do it. That risk indicator, key risk indicators, or KRIs, are going to be like telltale signs that the risk is actually rising, or there's a possibility of this actually coming to fruition. And so a lot of times people will do these key KRIs and performances too, where you hit main points to see if you're progressing up. Um, and if you are progressing, if you're hitting these KRIs, these constant key points or checkpoints, then there's a good chance that you're moving in the right direction. And the same things go for risk. If you're hitting certain key points, then maybe the risk is being able to increase in size or severity if it was to happen. Same thing on the decline too. Now, risk reporting is always going to be important. Everyone needs to understand that that the risk is something that we need to, give out to everyone, but it doesn't necessarily need to be on a daily basis for everyone. Maybe to your managers and your CISOs, they probably want to know this on a more quarterly basis, um, versus your people who are working every day in the risk management space. They're probably going to want to know this on a daily basis. And when it comes to risk reporting, you pretty much just you're having these living documents that once you create them, you're constantly updating them. Like that, the risk register here could be a type of reporting where we are constantly updating this register, and it really never really stops because risk is always going to be there. And so we need to make sure that people are aware of it, but you don't need to send the risk registry out every day to the people, or even monthly. You could probably send that out annually, just to say, hey, this is what we've been tackling over the last year. Let's take a look at it, and let's take some things off that don't apply to us anymore. Let's put some new things on there that we may have forgotten. So this whole time talking about risk, I've been talking about how does it impact the company. This is where you need to know your essential functions. What what makes the company run, and what can it not run on? If it doesn't have certain functions, are you still going to be able to function as a business? Meaning, can you make money if this function goes down? If not, then that's a critical system and it's an essential function. If it's an essential function, we need to put redundancy in place so it doesn't go down. So a question I ask you guys is that how important is the internet to a lot of online companies? The internet is the sole backbone of a lot of, if not all of the online companies. But yet a lot of them just have one access to the internet. That's all they have. If their access to the internet is down, then their website is down, or they can't answer any orders. They can't get back with any customers. They can't do meetings. And so you need to have a redundancy. How do you create a whole nother redundancy of a internet provider? Those are the type of things where you come up in the risk assessment. We go over that and we say, okay, well, you only got one connection through Time Warner. Okay, Time Warner needs to have they have a fiber line cut in the middle of the city. You're out of the internet for 8 hours. Can your system or can your company survive that? Maybe, maybe not. What's the maximum tolerable downtime? And the key word here is tolerable. If someone was to go to your website and this is your sole business being online, and they see that it was unreachable at that time to go to your website, will your customer come back in the next couple of hours, next couple of minutes, the next day? Will they come back? That's the tolerable downtime. And to get to a maximum point, you need to, not saying that it's a science or a formula that comes up with that particular time. The formula that's there is normally just kind of giving you an approximate time. So to for the sake of argument, I would say a max time is 16 hours. 16 hours you get to be down and non-working before someone else actually says, you know what, I'm going to this other store, I'm going to this other website, I'm not going to mess with this person. So to give a real life situation on that is that, how long do you think it'll take for Netflix to actually be down before someone says, you know what, Paramount Plus. That's where I'm going. I'm just going there, and I'm not messing with Netflix tonight. Or better yet, I would say Tubi. Tubi is probably going to be your best competitor to Netflix. Anyway, I think it is. But anyway, what's the maximum tolerable downtime for Netflix? Can they be down for 6 hours? That might be too long. Maybe they can be down for, I think the maximum downtime for Netflix can be down is 15 minutes. Given the size of the company, um, and the type of events that they have, before they start to lose customers to Tubi, I think the reason why I would give them 15 minutes is because you got to think about how many people will constantly go back to the app just to see if it's working or not. And if not, then you could start to say in a qualitative analysis that, you know what, I ain't messing with Netflix no more. They not reliable. I'm going to Tubi. Never is down. I'm going to Tubi. And you may lose on a quantitative analysis. You may lose 15% of your users. Okay, so that's how that works. So you want to make sure that you understand your maximum tolerable downtime, but this is not necessarily something that the cybersecurity engineer or analyst will know, or the CISO. They don't really. This is normally going to be your C-level individuals understanding what's the downtime to where we just can't go past a certain point without being in our customers' face. What's the maximum tolerable downtime for Walmart? How can you go to Walmart in the middle of a day where you're thinking that they're open and their doors just don't open? And what's the maximum time to where you'll say, you know what? Forget this. I'm going to Target. Maybe a little, maybe a lot. I would say probably not a lot, because what you're probably going in there, I would think after a certain amount of time, you could probably say, you know what, I'll pay just a little bit of more money and go to Target and get it. All right, moving on. Vendor management concept. So remember, when we're talking about these vendors, man, these vendors are, once we bring a vendor in, an outside party, a third party into our company, we're talking about bringing on any type of baggage that they come with. Okay. And we got to understand that we need to vet them out before we sign a contract with them. All right. Like my mama say, before you get into bed with them, hey, make sure you vet everything out. Understand what they bringing with them. And so you got to understand that when it comes to these third parties. And on this slide here, oh, go ahead, X. X, you got your.
Yeah, my bad. I was trying to unmute myself. I'm actually on the way home, but so also have a grievance with that. Yes, please make sure you get all the details before you enter into anything with a third party. Right now, I'm dealing with a company. So the certificate for our website has expired, but the renewal certificate was sent to the person who's the technical person who set it up for our school now, and we're waiting on them to give us access to the certificate because they put the email in their name instead of a person with the school. So for one aspect of our school, so for a certain aspect, it's not a major thing, but it's still like a minor thing that I would rather like. Whenever they did this, why didn't they sign up with us? I work for Talladega, so they should have signed up with a Talladega email instead of the vendor email, in which
Mhm.
we could at least have access to in case of emergency. So it's like we don't have full access of all our access because we dealt with a vendor. And when the time came, the person who was supposed to be watching the vendor wasn't making sure that the vendor had a organizational email in which we can gain access to in case we either start dealing with them. And in our case, they see that we're kind of fed up with them, so we kind of trying to move away from them. And they're like, "Well, we're just gonna start answering your calls now."
Mhm.
So some vendors can be, excuse my French, assholes. In this case,
Yeah. And I've seen that time and time again where you're trying to do right by the business, and then there's a third party got their hands in something, and like, just in case, and like in your case where you need total control of something, and Lord forbid you actually need that, and then you need to get in contact with them in order to fix that, or to at least have it, and they're nowhere to be found. They're not answering the phones that day, none of that. And people are just breathing down your neck just because of the third party person. And I've seen places where we've gotten out of deals just so we can do it right the next time. And so we may have went with a lesser vendor. And what I mean by that is that maybe they didn't offer all the features that the prior vendor did. Or maybe we may have paid a little bit more to get out of our old contract into a new contract. But that's just, you got to vet them out. You got to vet them out. And you got to understand that this is who we want to be with for the next 3 years. These is normally 3 years is probably going to be your typical contract for a vendor. But just, ask good questions. Um, and what I mean by that is that ask questions that pertains to your job and how we do things here at our company. How is your product, your service, um, your customer service, the third party customer service? How is that all going to play a part in our sensibility of just having a smooth day? Can we call and open up a ticket with y'all real easy? If not, do we have to jump through hoops? Can we get somebody on the phone whenever we have problems? You know, all of those things need to come up in an assessment. And you can call people in, and a lot of times what you do is that you call these vendors in and you have a meeting with them and they show you their product, and you can ask that salesperson some questions, but you typically want to get to a technical um, individual. So you'll have kind of like a second meeting, and they'll normally bring in a technical expert as well as a salesperson. So these two people, they have two different jobs, to where one just knows the product, the other one knows the price of the product and how much they're going to charge you. So the person who knows the money wise, they don't really necessarily know how to talk to you as far as what you're going to do for your day-to-day process. You want to be able to ask that technical guy or girl the what is the ins and outs when it comes to your product. How are we going to have what's a regular day that looks like? What does it look like for us as customers? um if there's a problem, are y'all going to, how is sales looking when you want to talk to the salesperson? How is sales looking? Are y'all going out of business anytime soon? You don't want to ask it like that, but at the same time you want to get to the point where you don't want to get in a contract with a vendor and then all of a sudden they sell the business to someone else, and then now you gotta redo all of your policies with them because you don't know about their new leadership. So just be careful when it comes to third party vendors. You're not gonna get around it. Um, some of the biggest companies I've seen, they still use small vendors, medium sized vendors. It doesn't really matter. Um, it's part of the it's part of how corporate America works. Um, Conflicts of interest. So when it comes to picking out a third party, you don't want to necessarily go with my homeboy company that does antivirus. I'm gonna bring him in because I know he'll give me a good deal on it. Not saying that that's not something that you shouldn't do, but be careful of giving favorability to people that have your best, who doesn't necessarily have your best interests at heart, but you could be more invested in them than someone that you're not, someone that's has no ties to you at all. So those conflict of interest, even though you may be getting a better deal, you may not be getting a better service. Um, all of those things that come into play. You may not even be with the company after you bring in this person. So just go with the better vendor in all cases. And if you have some type of conflict, or you have some type of interest that you just bond with this person all of a sudden, or you just not, because that can happen. Let me take that back. If you just can't see things like the definition says objectively, then be wary of that, because you don't want to make it seem like this is the sole reason why we're doing business. Is because we went to the same school. All right. If we go up in a third party meeting and we're interviewing a third party, and only thing we're talking about is the same school, we went to the same school and the football team and this, that, and the third. And then all of a sudden, we ask no questions about the product and you still get the contract. There's a good chance that it's like, all right, there might be a conflict of interest here. And so now when we try to hold this company accountable, we may not get our just due because of someone not being able to see things from an outside point of view. Some other things that you could take into consideration when it comes to picking your vendor is having to see their reports. Sometimes they have these audit reports on a particular vendor. You can ask to see those to see exactly, um, how are they actually holding configurations? Are they doing things right? Because sometimes you have to intervene, you have to intermingle their configurations with yours. And so while you may be secure on your side, excuse me, if you're working with a cloud vendor and they're not doing certain scans on their side, whenever you push your data to their systems, then now your data becomes uh, insecure because of how they're keeping their house. So you want to make sure that you read those audits if they are available and see what type of penetration testing or results that they had. And here's another big one. What are their supply chains? So the vendor may be our in our supply chain, but the vendor themselves may have their own supply chain that they depend on. So the easiest way I could put this is that if I'm running a hot dog stand and I depend on um I depend on Susie's bread truck or bread business to bring me the buns every day. I got the hot dogs. She need to bring me the buns. If her supplier, her bread supplier, Marita doesn't give her the buns, then I can't get mad at, well, what I call her? Maria? Not Maria. Susan's. I can't get mad at Susan because she ain't got the bread. She has to wait on her own supply in order to give me my supply. That was kind of I had that same issue. I had my truck that needed to be fixed, and it needed to go to two different parties. And but the party I gave my truck back to Ford. Ford needed to go to Tuscany, and Tuscany needed to go to another company in Whipple in Santa Clara or something like that. But and Whipple did not have the part. They had to make the part. So now Tuscany is like, well, we can't give you a part if we don't, we're waiting on our supply to give us that. And so it's just a big mess. So bringing it all back to technology, um, while you may have your third party in there, and you're thinking that your third party is good to go. They may have some more supplies that's coming in from their third party, and so keep those things in mind. Now, once you actually sign those contracts and you get these policies popping off, you want to make sure that you understand that you at least have some of these in play, and the let's go over some of the ones that's highlighted here. The memorandum of understanding, the memorandum of agreement is just kind of the same thing, and these two policies are just basically saying, um, this is, as a third party, this is what I offer, um, and as far as an agreement, this memorandum is saying that you agree that I'm bringing this type of service to your network. The understanding is that you you understand that I'm not going to bring anything that I did not advertise or that I did not lay out in my details of what I bring to the table. Now, non-disclosure agreements are typically going to, or NDAs are going to be typically signed before information is given. If you have a particular company that, if they're sharing some type of financial, um, some financial numbers, maybe how much they grossed in sales last year, maybe they want you to sign an NDA before they go to, just in case if you go to their competitors and then say, you know what, I met with company so and so, and they're not doing so great in these areas. Maybe y'all can, you know, finish them off in this particular areas of sales because they're just struggling. They're really hanging on with these numbers. You could sign that NDA in that if they can figure out that you were the one to give that type of information to their competitors, then they can hold you liable, uh, as far as, breaking that non-disclosure agreement. SLAs. We talked about SLAs in core 2 when it came to help desk, and the type of timeline that we needed to have when it came to giving out a particular service to someone. So in your third party might come to you and say, hey, whenever you put in a ticket, we're going to answer you within 24 hours. That's going to be our service level agreement. We're going to answer you. Now, in that same agreement, it may say, we're not going to finish the ticket. We won't finish the ticket until it's done, but we will at least give you one reply within 24 hours. And so that could be a simple, you put in a ticket and they give you an automatic reply saying, hey, we got your ticket. We'll get back with you. Right. So service level agreement is typically going to be like that, but you got to look at really what they're really saying in that agreement to see what you're going to get. Statement of work and work order. So when you're talking about contracts, you want to have some type of statement of work where it shows you, as a contractor or a third party coming in, these are the things that I'm working on. No more, no less. I'm going to fulfill the statement of work, and then anything that you ask over that, I have the right to disagree to. Um, this is different when you're looking at a job description and you see, um, one of the bullet points that it says for the duties is to fulfill all other tasks as assigned. Then that pretty much says, whatever I want you to do, that's what you're going to do. And my beloved HBCUs are notorious for this, where they'll have you as a network engineer, but if they need you to speak at the assembly or speak at business week or whatever the case may be, that's another task. That's another task as assigned, and you may be signed to that. And you may have to, be the dorm director. I don't know, but notorious. Anyway, moving on to audits and assessments. We already kind of talked about assessments a little bit, but you can have internal assessments, you can have internal audits, and then you can have external audits. Now, internal audits are, a small group of people that they follow a list of different categories to see if we actually are following by the rules. But then they may also be a little bit, this may go back to the conflict of interest, where they may be a little bit lenient on why we're not having certain things performed. And so having an external audit is going to give us more of a clear picture of what we actually are doing and if we're upholding the standard. The thing about the third party external is that this is where we need the NDA to come in place, because you don't want someone to have an assessment and be like, you know what, this person they ain't even got passwords in play. You get them easy. You want to make sure you have that NDA in play, and you want to make sure that whatever they give you on that external assessment, we try to address those as soon as possible. All right. So you don't want to be caught out there just because somebody kept it real, but at the same time, we out here slacking. Now that goes into penetration testing. So we can have someone, we can have our networking team, our security team do kind of like these little audits and be able to say, hey, we need to address these issues here. But it's nothing like a penetration test. Penetration test, if done with a obtrusive meaning behind it, if it's really done right, it's typically going to have this doggone red team behind it, and this is more than one person, and they're coming at you at every angle, and they're trying to really get to. They're going to attack your business as if it's a real malicious attack. But a lot of businesses don't want a full blown penetration test. They just kind of want to have, hey, do an assessment of my network and let me have a printout of what we need to work on. That's typically what you're going to get, because the ones that we always done is that you can have somebody come in, and this is goes to the passive reconnaissance. We're going to let you come in, we'll give you a username and password. Okay, now figure out everything that's wrong in the inside. Where a true penetration test is, I meet the penetration tester across the street from the business, and I say, hey, anything goes. Try your best to get into the company and disrupt anything. Take notes. I give you 2 weeks to create all the havoc you can. And if that means they need to bring down the network, that means they social engineer someone out of their ID card, they take the router out, whatever. If they disrupt our whole business, that's what a true penetration test is going to actually do. And that's a great way for you to figure out, okay, going back to our risk assessment, hey, maybe we need to reevaluate our risk assessment because we just let somebody just walk on into the network closet. We need to reevaluate that. We thought we were straight, but we wasn't. And so a true penetration test is going to allow that. But to my point of it never being like that I've seen, it's because we're still having business and we still are trying to, hold customers to their you know services that they need. We don't have time for a penetration test to actually take down the whole network while we're in the middle of a transaction. I get it, but it's never going to really give you a true readout. And so a lot of times you'll get these little passive reconnaissance or passive penetration tests. I give you a certain amount of information. Is not necessarily true. I mean, as far as like they're starting from the across the street, figure it out. I don't give you any information about my website, people in here, none of that. But the places that I've seen, they'll give them a good bit of information and let them, be able to, really plop them into the middle of the network and then poke around. But to my point of red team, if you're having more than one penetration tester on site, these are going to be your offensive players. These are going to be the ones that's constantly giving out the threats. They're going to probably be working with Kali Linux, being able to um, exploit any type of vulnerabilities that you have out there, and then recording them, reporting them to whoever we need to have them. Get those reports either on a daily basis or after the whole test is over. And then you got the blue team, which is going to be on the defensive side. Now you also have what they call purple team, and I think purple team is going to be I forget, they got purple team and some other team, but for the security plus, red team, blue team is really what you need to know. Um, but a lot of companies are not big enough in order to have a red team or a blue team. You're typically going to have a blue team just because you gotta, if you're working in a cybersecurity department, then everybody's they're going to be on a defensive. But offensively, you may not have time to be offensive minded. You may be, and that's where going back to the words that I said of oh, what was the words? proactive and reactive. So reactive is going to be your defensive side. Hey, they did this, so we will react to this. Someone got a ransomware, we will react defensively and do this. Offensively, when you're talking about exploiting something, there's really on a day-to-day basis, there's no chances for us to really kind of think, okay, where can we be offensively malicious at? You think about those things that we could change the configurations on, but a lot of times in a day-to-day basis, you're thinking more on the defensive side of it, right? That's all I had for risk assessment and the processes. Any questions? Lesson 16, data protection and compliance concepts. Excuse me. Uh, Not going to be terribly long today. And remember that after this one, we'll start back going to do some more studying on core one and core two. But let's go ahead and let's jump into um, lesson 16, data classification and compliance. So when talking about cybersecurity, we always refer to the information that we make for the company as data. Um, it could be something like a Word document, PowerPoint, but it also could be some copies of PDF files that we have, maybe some important policies that we type up. Maybe it's an important ingredient that we use to make our special cookies, whatever the case may be. Um, this is important to the company, and this is the data that we actually have now. Sometimes those data some data is important, more important than others, but for the most part, we want to protect it all. And the more sensitive ones, we want to put tags on it. We want to let other people know that, hey, be extra careful with this type of information. But we got to understand that we need to recognize what data that is before we can actually do that to that particular data. Now, the two that I got here highlighted is trade secrets and intellectual property, IP. Now, don't get IP. Sometimes they may try to fool you on the test, right? They may ask you a question and have it abbreviated IP, but if you read the questions and understand the context, they may be asking you what intellectual property or data is so and so and so, instead of it asking you what IP address that is asking you. So it should be two totally different things. But let's go ahead and let's jump into intellectual property. That could be anything that can be sensitive to the or critical data for that business. So let's just say KFC. KFC has what, the 11 herbs and spices, right? Well, the intellectual property would be the 11 herbs and spices that they use to create the original chicken. If that was to be compromised in any type of way, then we could say that the breach has happened and someone has gotten hold of our intellectual property. Instead of just saying, hey, somebody got hold of our recipe, they could say somebody got hold of our intellectual property, which could be a grave danger to our company and its existence. So we want to make sure that any type of intellectual property, especially those that's very sensitive to the company, things that what makes the company different than any other company out there. Now, yes, you have Pepsi and you got Coca-Cola, but the ingredients are not totally the same. And you would think that their business plans differ in some type of way. So what we think is critical to us, we want to deem that as intellectual property and say, you know what, I don't want anybody else to know this about us internal, unless you're internal to us. Anybody external, They don't need to have this information. Now, going back to trade secrets is, when it comes to the stock market, and or sometimes it can be looked at, well, let me jump to that later. When you're talking about the stock market and you're talking about having some type of insight of a business, and then if you're holding stocks and then you decide to sell the stocks because of, where the company is going, then that's a quote unquote trade secret. And then, that's of course illegal to do. You can't sell based off of, it's kind of going back to conflict of interest. You can't really understand or know trade secrets and then base your actions off of those trade secrets. Um, so it's kind of a conflict of interest if you do so. But anyway, trade secrets is not always just associated with the stock market. Is sometimes associated with the intellectual property of, we're actually taking critical information, critical data, and then selling that information out or trading that information out. So you can look at it in two different ways, but more than likely you're going to look at it in a way of, someone has an insight of a business and they decide to handle their stocks in a certain way, or they tell you to buy stocks in this particular company because um, they just got a loan from the government or a grant from the government, which is going to allow for them to boom. So, to give an example, if you look at Tesla, and you are an employee with Tesla, but then all of a sudden um, you sell all of your stocks right before the Trump campaign started, and you knew that since you're in the business um, of Tesla, you knew that Elon was going to be in Donald Trump's cabinet. And so you decided to sell your stock while it still had a high value, knowing or having a good feeling that it will dip whenever they announce Elon as being a part of the cabinet. And so that's having intellectual knowledge um, of the company, and then almost having a trade secret of saying, you know what, I hear this is coming down the pipe. I'm gonna go ahead and jump off this rag quick and save that money. So sometimes you see politicians, they get in trouble behind this, where they have a stock in a particular company, and all of a sudden they dump their whole stock, they sell it all just to get the recoup or to get the value of the stock at that particular time. But then as the stock tanks in the next couple of days, people will look back and say, you know what, so and so sold all their stocks right before it tanked. Um, you know, let's try to get this person on that. That's a, trade secret, being, somewhere having some type of conflict of interest in that. All right, so data classifications normally, um, like I said, we have data that's more important than others and more sensitive. So of course we want to keep everything in, like, let's say HR, to be real sensitive, right? Because we're talking about people's information, um, personal information at that, medical records, whatever the case may be, maybe some payment card in this information that's probably there as well. So we want to make sure that all that's sensitive, but that doesn't necessarily make anything that's in the marketing department to be less sensitive or unclassified. So in the military, you normally have, three different types of levels when it comes to data classification. You have unclassified, classified, and then top secret, or you can have an unclassified, secret, and then top secret. Um, that's the only three typically, but I believe that there's many levels above that. I think that you typically, you go to a certain point and then that's all the government really wants you to hear about. But I'm not going to get on my soapbox about that. But um, there can be many levels to it, or what you could consider to be sensitive information, um, but it's easy to keep it at a level that people can understand, that there's a level that most people can read and understand and don't really care about what's going on with that particular category. uh, that's more your class of unclassified, non-secret, whatever you want to call it. But then you have secret, something that's, hey, this is information we don't want to get out. um, and we need to make sure that it has a different level of security versus the unclassified stuff. Not saying that the unclassified stuff should be out there for everyone to see, because you could do reconnaissance on that and piece together certain secretive information based off of the non-secret stuff. You get what I'm saying? So you don't want to just make everything just kind of nonchalant and just like, hey, we don't put nothing on anything that's unclassified. You want to make sure that you do put a level of security to it, but it doesn't have to be locked down like secret is, and definitely not locked down the way top secret is. So um secret is more, if we're going back to KFC, that's the secret information will be more your 11 herbs and spices. And the reason why it's not top secret is because you're constantly bringing in people to make that type of chicken, right? So say if they actually have to create the spices and herbs every morning, then hey, we don't want so and so on the streets to understand what the recipe is, but anybody who's wearing a KFC shirt needs to understand what the secret information is on making this chicken. Now, the top secret information may be, um, if we're staying with the KFC um, point of view, it may be, hey, we're doing or McDonald's like to do this. McDonald's will bring back the McRib sandwich, and while you thought it was a pork sandwich, it's actually made out of bologna. And that's what they, what I'm saying, you see exactly what it is, but it's so shocking, right? To where you're looking at it like, well, this doesn't really need to get out, because we don't want to make sure we show people that they're eating bologna. I knew you was gonna say something. Uh, I'm pretty sure that we don't want to show people that they're eating this for the McRib. So we may classify that as top secret. Not saying that it's morally right, but we know that if this information gets out, it could take a damaging blow to the company. So we want to, what we could tell people what's in the secret sauce on the doggone Big Mac, Thousand Island dressing, whatever. But the McRib, we ain't gonna really tell nobody what that is. So let's keep that as top secret. We'll label that as top secret. Make sure that only a handful of people can understand what is in this, and we make sure that those people accounts are to the brim locked down as much as possible. Um, they have the most trouble. We give them the most training as far as what to look for when it comes to going and traveling in these places. So you could you understand from my examples, what information is very important, and then who can actually have that information. Just because you work there doesn't necessarily mean that you understand why the pay grade is what it is. So I had this problem at two places where I went, where someone at HR accidentally emailed the pay grade for everyone in the company to everybody in the company. So it was um it was an email that went out, and if you got it in time, then you can open up the attachment and then see exactly what everybody made, right? So that's, while you may say, hey, it's not that big of a deal, it is to a certain extent, especially when you start seeing um who's getting underpaid, why. Those questions will come out of why are they getting underpaid. um and you're looking at tenure, and then that person is not getting paid as this much and they just started. um you could have outrageous salaries for people who stayed 20, 30 years. You didn't even know this company could pay that type of money, and you just asked for a raise, and They're not trying to give you a raise, so it could get real messy. But that type of information should only be privy to maybe the HR manager as well as the CFO and the CEO. Maybe it should only be a handful of people that can see the whole entire list of pay grades for everyone, right? So those type of things need to be vetted out. We need to sit down and go have a meeting with everybody in the departments and say, hey, what is sensitive? What is really sensitive? What what will change the outlook of this company if this information was to get out? What is that? And we put tags on those things. And what I mean by tags is that we put things in the metadata. So and if you look here, I can go to my information, my info screen, and the metadata is the details. Where is my details? Not the protection. Look for issues. It's going to be here. So how you see how the author is automatically ingrained as James. This is where we could put more information about this particular document. And it's not necessarily what we see once we go and open up the file. We see this when we open up the file, but the metadata in the back, the details of uh, the actual document is something totally different. So we could do properties. We can go to the details here. And you see how all of this is detailed out as far as creation date, last modification, the content type. All this information is what we call the metadata. This is almost like the data makeup for this particular document, or kind of like the medical records for your particular document. And so whenever you send this, you package this up in a Ziploc bag, not a Ziploc bag, Jesus, in a zip file, and you actually attach it to an email. That metadata follows that, and so we can tag these documents and put in there, hey, sensitive information with two little stars or whatnot, and now tell our DLP system, our data loss prevention system, to look for anything tagged sensitive with two stars. The more stars it has, or if we go up to a level of 3 stars, it's top secret. 2 stars is secret, and then 1 star is unclassified. So you can send a warning out for anything that's unclassified. Anybody can read it. We'll just send a warning out, like, hey, once you send that email out, you'll get a response saying, just to be aware that this is unclassified data, but just to be sure that you are willing to send this out, or just confirm that you want to send this out, and you do so, and there's nothing to it. But if it has 2 stars in that metadata and it stops, it kind of it doesn't deliver that mail until you give a confirmation that you know for sure that, hey, this is the information that's in this particular document. Are you sure that you want to send this to someone external outside of the company? And the same thing, even at a more you know intrusive state with a top secret data. Maybe you can't do anything unless you acknowledge this particular email before it goes out. Maybe on the secret, you could probably ignore the the notification and maybe come back to it. But on the top secret, it has to be addressed right then and there. And maybe on top of that, even when you say yes, go ahead and send that out, maybe we still tag your supervisor in the email automatically to say, hey, this person sent out this sensitive information, just to keep you in the loop of what's going on. So that's where DLP can come in and be very good. um, the problem with all DLP systems that I've seen is that companies have been working for years, if not decades, and it's so much information that's on the computer and servers, it's hard to really tag everything automatically. And so you have to go by one, bit by bit or document by document and manually tag these documents. So you can imagine that's probably not going to get done in a lot of cases. All right. So where the data is stored is also a big complication as far as um, privacy is concerned and the classification is concerned too. So if we're still talking about classifications, maybe we don't want any type of secret and top secret information to be in certain countries. So we definitely don't want it in Korea, South Korea. We definitely don't want it in Russia. Maybe some parts of Asia. We might not want our Southeast Asia. We don't want our information in. Maybe some parts of Africa. We don't want our information in. Some parts of South America. Um, we just while there's data centers there, we don't want our information in a particular country where um, the country may be able to take over the responsibility of the data center that our information is there, right? So um, I hate to give the example of South Korea, but if your information is in South Korea on a server in there, and then all of a sudden uh, the the ruler over there is saying, "Hey, we're not allowing this particular encryption to be on our particular servers anymore. So if you have anything that's higher than a 128-bit encryption, then you need to downgrade that encryption because we need to see exactly what are you hiding from us," which is, if I'm not mistaken, this happened maybe, I want to say, 7 years ago. So they told you to downgrade your encryption level in order for, just in case if they wanted to probe that particular document, given the fact that they're in that country, they can have the policies to do so. And so you want to make sure that you understand where are your backup data centers are, and more importantly, you remember how we talked about last night, your third party vendors. You want to make sure that your third party vendors ain't cheaping out somewhere trying to have a server in Russia, but they're selling you the service for cheaper, but they're keeping your information over there in Russia. It's not, you're looking directly at your third party, but your third party has somebody that they're in the bed with, and it's someone that means your data in no good. So you want to make sure that you understand where your data is, and it may take a little bit of digging to really figure out where it could be. All right, data privacy. So you heard me talk a lot about PII, personal identifiable information. So again, we're talking about first and last name, date of birth, um, of course, the social security number, um, street address, and I think that's really it when it comes to like how to determine who you are. You don't really need the security social security number to really kind of figure out who you are. Again, like I said, how many how many Kristen McCords are there in Alabama? And then if I can, even if I get 30 results, how many can I really, if I have just another piece of personal identifiable information, how can I really drill down to who she is and then who the person I'm really looking for? Remember, I said that if you had 30 people in a classroom, there's a good chance, a very high chance, that there's two people in that whole room that has the same birthday. And it just goes to show that there's a possibility that um, it's not so much information that we really need that's going to defer us, not defer, but differentiate differentiate us from each other. We we have our first and last name, but a lot of times, if I could just get an address behind that, an email address, or more particular on a physical address, then I probably can find whoever I need to find. I don't know if you guys ever tried this, but I like doing it. Um, just Google yourself and see if what pops up. And just give it one finding point. Let's see. Hey, that's me. And given the fact, and that's a place where I used to work at. Given the fact that you know the internet, your social media is growing all the time, it'll be easier for search engines to find you. Um, and it used to be like they used to have these ads up here to where you could find people and their personal information as far as like phone numbers and things of that nature. So you could look at it like, okay, well, let's see if I can get you on a call number. Or if I'm doing some type of marketing promotion and I know that you hold a certain position, then maybe I could just do a quick little Google search. I know that, and I was on the first page, was I? I was on the first page. And it comes up with something that I always push is my LinkedIn account. So, double-edged sword here. I want people to find me on LinkedIn, but at the same time, if somebody was really kind of looking for something secretive or to get more information on me, they could say, you know what? I know at least he's in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Um, and I don't know exactly if he works at Mitchell Technologies, but that's what he has listed. And you could just look at all the other things that I've done to really go back to the other Lee Mitchells. I'm probably not the other Lee Mitchells here that's here. Maybe that's not the people you're looking for. Maybe not. Might be looking for this guy. But yeah, just see what Google will come back on you and see is exactly what you got out there. There are programs that'll help you clean that type of information up if you don't want that. But you know what? I want to try something just real quick. I just thought about it. Y'all bear with me. Um, I want to put my phone number in. Interesting. Hmm. Yeah, Spokio is. I remember Spokio. That used to be something that you could find relatives close to you. And I think we got this on a slide or something like that. But a lot of times when you are with these phone companies, well, back in the day, I don't know how it is now, but you would have to do like a relative, I think, to get a phone line. Like they treated a phone line like it was doggone gold, and you just couldn't up and just be like it is now. Like I feel like anybody at y'all correct me if I'm wrong. What age do you have to be to get a phone line? Do you have to be a certain age?
I don't think there is an age.
Is it eight? Like it's not 18. Like it's got to be like 16 or something like that, right? 18? Really?
I think it's 18. In order to get like your own phone line, I'm pretty sure it's 18. Unless like I mean I guess because at 16, depending on what job you can get at 16. I mean, because some people who are 16 can find something like if you work at Chick-fil-A or you do something like that while you're in high school, you probably could still get a phone line. I remember I got my first phone line when I was 18. That's how they let me get it. Because at that point, it's kind of like I wouldn't say. Well, yeah, they do. They can
I
do a credit
was
check in order to run your
I was also gonna say,
honestly.
like, isn't a phone line a contract? And if you have to sign a contract in order to get your phone line, don't you gotta be 18 to sign a contract?
Yeah,
Touche.
unless you
Right.
just bought a phone outright.
Touche. You
So
got me
yeah,
on
it's
that.
probably 18.
Is as I bought my iPhone out, so I was able to own my own iPhone at like 15 with my own phone number. That's what I was going to type.
That's and see, I want to say y'all are right. Y'all are right. It's got to be 18 to open a whole line. But I guess I was looking at it like I remember. No, I don't remember. But I thought that it could be younger because I thought that kids are getting phones at way younger ages. Like y'all didn't get y'all first phone at 18, right? Y'all got it at, I'm assuming, way younger, maybe 14, 12. When the first time y'all got a phone?
I'm gonna be real honest with you. I didn't start getting my phone till I was like 12, and that was because I was in sports. My parents didn't play it. That's the only reason why they called them after practice.
I would say
Yeah.
like 10 is when I got my phone. I don't remember vaguely. I started with a Android, and then I upgraded at like 13 to an iPhone.
I didn't have that privilege. I started out with the most basic, babyest phone you could think of. I had a Firefly.
You want to know
My
what's
Oh,
crazy
first,
too?
the
Like
very first.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, you good? That was it.
a
I would say what's
Firefly.
crazy too, will be funny, Mr. Mitchell, is that, like, just like a little tidbit, when I used to get in trouble, my punishment was to get an Android. Like, I, I would have to get an Android phone whenever I got in trouble.
Let me tell you something, man. If you got to be the only person, I'm a pray for you. I hope to God that you get a job at Apple. I really do. I hope that you really somehow, some way, someone pulls you into Apple so you could be in that cult and be over there with. Is that Elon? That ain't Elon. That's
I'm not
Glenn.
gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. Like being
Mhm.
a computer science major, Apple does not play when it comes to their recruitment. I'm saying anytime they come to, do their little tidbits, their speeches, they're catered down. Boba, Chick-fil-A, brownie salad, they do not play when it comes to their recruitment. And when you do join Apple, like as an actual person on their team, you get so many like free stuff. It's ridiculous. I think
Yeah,
you get like an entire ecosystem when you start working for Apple, just like for free.
yeah. When they tell
Yep.
y'all to go, yo, we need some people to go to Mars and scout that out for us, yo. Let's go ahead and pick everybody from Apple. You be right over there. But
You
nah,
know, Mr. Mitchell, you ain't never heard of Firefly before?
I never heard of a firefly. The bug?
Yeah, this is it's got the four buttons. You can only call some emergency contacts. That's it. You can't talk to nobody else.
Oh, you mean like the Ladybug phone?
Oh, this look like some life alert stuff. It
Yeah, my
reminds me of I don't know. I'm showing my age again. Y'all
yeah,
ever heard
nah.
of Digimon?
Yes, I have heard of Digimon before. Yeah.
Yeah, this was kind of remind me of the Digimon eggs. Jesus, this made a phone call.
Yes, you have mom right there, and you got dad right there, and then in the middle button, bro. Listen, don't judge me, man. Listen, no, my life was a struggle. My dad was a drill sergeant. Okay, you have to understand. So, mom and dad, and then you got the book in the middle. You might get one extra emergency contact. That's it. After that, I had got mad. So, whatever money I had on the side, I bought me a track phone and told
Wow,
folks don't call me or text me unless it's the weekends or past a certain time of night. So you don't waste my minutes up. I remember them.
wow. I've learned something new today. Anybody else ever had this?
Well,
Jeez,
I would never be an Android heaven. Oh, that seemed like jail, Alcatraz, and prison.
at
So
least you could like Jesus.
I ain't never had that.
How you? Oh, okay. You hang up over there. Okay. and you just charge it up. I'm assuming with the traditional Android plug.
Yep.
I'm assuming the battery life was crazy long though, right? Because
Oh
it's,
yeah,
it's
that battery
nothing.
lasts. It was 2 days. It was 2 days. It was good. There
And
was, there was no games on there, but they had some really fire ringtones, so you
I
can
was
get
gonna say,
intrigued by the ringtones.
I was gonna say it has to be at least lasting for a couple of days for it to have those basic functions.
yeah, tell you the date.
It's
And
indestructible too. I'll tell you that much also.
I could see kids having it, but I can also see kids probably getting picked at if you bring that to school. Like
Oh,
you
I
can't. You can't
was. I
oh,
was. I was.
I'm sorry.
Hold up,
That's
guys.
when I bought my
Yeah, I'm not
triphone.
gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. If you would have pulled that out, boy, you would have got your asses around me.
Thanksgiving. Hold up, guys. Let me call my parents first.
And hit one button. And we hit this one over
Yeah,
here.
but I'll tell you this though, that thing never lost a signal. No matter where I was at, it had strong signal. It was top tier with the phone call.
Yeah.
No calls dropped.
Well, you
Okay,
didn't have much to do on it, so I bet it had the best signal on that.
how much? Nah, I ain't gonna ask that. But this couldn't have been $100. Yeah, okay.
Nah, I don't think so. It was super cheap. Yeah, nah. It must have been $100 then. I don't know. That was
But to
like
tell you the
early
truth,
2000s.
I would give this to seniors. Old people like 80 and up or 70s and up that don't really care about the phones like that. Give them this,
What?
in my opinion. Hey,
You know
that's what I'm.
what? That is where I would give that to my granny. Like, if she was just old and didn't have nothing to do, and then what she want to call me, I would just give her that. Because honestly, dealing with like older people, they hate having those buttons. But I mean, even modern phones now, you can put them in old people mode. But not to be rude, but like it's kind of like I don't know what it's called, like assistive mode. I just call it, the elderly mode. But yeah, and it turns your iPhone into just a easy, like just three button phone.
It worked.
Yeah.
Look, you get a phone case and everything. That's what's up with the little ring.
Hey man, listen, the selling pitch was great. I don't know why in the world. I don't know how my parents found that phone. I don't know what was the purpose of it. I was just like, okay, I guess we here. And then, at a certain point in time, my dad got me the sidekick. And then we
Okay,
was we
so
was
that was a big
cool.
upgrade.
We were cool. Yeah, it was a big upgrade, man. It was through Verizon too. I thought I had money, you
Yeah,
know? Thought I had money with a sidekick.
Verizon hit you with them hidden fees like it ain't nothing.
Yeah, because you got the front, you can call through the front, you can text through the front too. That screen's small. But then imagine you just talking to a girl, and you sidekick, wow. And now she like, he got money because you got a sidekick. In actuality, I'm not paying the bill on the phone, so I don't have money. But it was cool.
Y'all taught me something tonight. This is. I got to bring this up to my wife. I don't think we ever seen this. Just
That was the
what
exact
year was this?
packaging right there. That was the exact packaging right there. I remember that kid in the front, that white kid in the front smiling like that. I remembered it because I hated the
What year
packaging
was
so
this
much. I hated it so much.
for you? What year?
That was, I want to say 2000 and 2006, 2006, 2007. Yeah. I'm old, man. I'm old.
All right, all right. Anyway, um, okay. So let me get back to the phone lines. Excuse me. I remember how they got the relative information because I wanted to say that you had to come in there and open a phone line, but they wanted to know almost like if you couldn't pay your bill, it was almost like having a cosign or in that realm. And so they would get when you have a cosigner, they're pretty much giving up the same information that you're giving up, just to be able to open that phone line up. And now that you guys say that, yeah, it is a contract, which would, I didn't think about that. That makes total sense to have all of that information, even on a cosigner. But long story short, you could go to these sites that, you know, they will look up your information, but they will also see who's associated with you and your information. And you may see really kind of like first cousins here, if not brothers and sisters. It's according to how, how family is. And so it's just, you could do a lot of reconnaissance here, is what I'm saying, is that the information, the data that we put out, personal data, sometimes could be more than what we're actually bargaining for. And, as consumers, the only thing we're really looking at is we're trying to get the phone. And we're not even thinking about someone's whole address just being here for someone to look at. And I think in some cases where, there's a whole phone number. And if I wanted to try to call this number and run a scam, maybe I can, maybe I can get a hit, maybe not. Jesus Christ, they even coming out here with demographic numbers. So they really trying to sell the website here now, because I'm assuming that when Spokio was out and was hot, Google was still kind of in the trend up. People wasn't really going to it as a end all be all search engine. But it's really kind of like Spokio was and other sites like it was like the yellow pages on steroids. Just kind of, hey, we got the information that you're looking for on this person, but we got some more information too if you want that.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't use it now. I think that they are some better paid information sites out there if you're really trying to do like um background checks on people. Now, not saying that you should just do a background check on anybody, right? Not just because you like that. Don't do that. But if you need to run a background check on someone, there are paid um options that you can have. And I would say they go intrusively into your personal information, but I don't think it goes that crazy deep to where they're gonna pull medical records or police records. They may show that you've gotten arrested, but they may not show the charge. You get what I'm saying? So there are some out there, and these companies, they do take advantage of those type of services. Not, but at the same time, and let me get on my soapbox about that, is that back in the day when we're talking about 0506, people will look at pulling a background report on you. Nowadays, they'll go and Google you just like how I did on myself, and go and look at your social media posting. And then they'll decide, I wouldn't say they'll decide, but sometimes people get a good understanding of if they like you or not based off of your social media presence. And so I would always say, if you got a social media platform that's, for the most part, you speak your mind, or you got certain points up there that's not popular across the board, right? So it's not PC, it's not politically correct, and we all know what that is. Then make sure that
Only tried to jumper.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Go.
didn't know I was on mute.
No problem. So if it's not politically correct or whatever the case may be, and we all know what that is, just go to your privacy settings and make sure that you change your profile to where only the things that you want people to see, to be able to see. So we all got people that's just kind of like lurkers on the internet that's just kind of like, yo, they'll go to your page. They ain't gonna ask you to be a friend or whatever, but they just skimming, looking at the timelines, looking at what you're posting, whatever the case may be. If you want them to only see a certain amount of things, not all your pictures, not all your videos, not all your posts, make sure you go through take time out of your day and go to your profile and turn some of that stuff off. You'll see the setting in there to it'll show you see your profile as a visitor or something like that, and decide what you want them to see. And at least that will, if any type of potential employers come to your page, then you could say, oh, you know what, Majesty ain't, look, he got a phone, he got a doggone Android in his hand, he can't work for Apple. So you can go ahead and change that up and at least keep those things private. So do yourself a favor and do that just one Sunday out of the day when you ain't doing nothing. Just go there and change that up. All right. Moving on to privacy data when we're talking about GDPR. So we talked about GDPR, I think last week, where this is according to the UK, Great Britain, England, Ireland, those people over there across the pond, right? As they say, the GDPR is what they're gonna really be basing their privacy data on. And the main thing that you need to know about the GDPR is the right to be forgotten rule. And this is where the personal information that they give a company, they have it in their policies to where after a certain amount of years that you will delete their information from your database. So let's say Spokio, right? We just saw Spokio. I still got it? I ain't got it. Anyway, we just saw Spokio have a whole bunch of information up there. Well, in the GDPR, they would have it to where after 2 years, you couldn't find that person's information on that particular site anymore because they have the right for them to forget their information. Some cases in America where they still have your information for years, if not decades, maybe just constantly keeping it. Not saying that they're going to do anything with it, but they're not gonna delete it either. So if they become a breach victim, then your information in turn becomes available on the dark web because of the people that you dealt with in 2002, or like in the case of Savalas, the Firefly phone. Maybe he registered that phone, and while the company may not be in business, they never got rid of the old database. And so if that database is somewhere online, then maybe it could be breached, and then they could possibly take that information, that personal information, sell that on the dark web, and maybe create some new credit cards in all those people's name because we had to create a new phone, right? Or you said it was your parents, so it will be your parents' information. So just it, not saying that the right to be forgotten should be something that we have here, but in the UK, if you have data over there, then know that that's the type of time that they're on. That you just can't be gathering data and just keeping it forever. You got to go ahead and dispose of it properly. And we talked about these data breaches, man, because that's exactly what happens when you gather so much information that eventually, I wouldn't say eventually, but there's a high chance of a data breach happening because you got so many people putting their hands on the same information. And so what happens when a organization becomes a victim of a data breach? You damage the reputation, and people don't really want to mess with that particular company anymore. Or they want to, you know what? I heard this about them. I want to see if there's a different way. Now, it may not happen that way because I remember, I want to say 5 years ago, maybe it went five. but Experian, the credit bureau, they became a victim of a data breach, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's a credit bureau. It's not like you're gonna say, you know what, I don't want my credit ran with them anymore. I mean, you can and don't really ask them for a credit update or a credit report update, but and go get you a LLC and then focus in on that credit. But they're kind of set there as a standard and create their, you know, their breach didn't really hurt their business. It's just kind of they put out a statement saying, hey, we messed up, my bad. Hey, but just keep they messed up. The data leaked out, people's data leaked out, and they said be on the lookout if any type of accounts open up in your name. It's your fault that my information is out there, but you're telling me now I got to be on pins and needles to make sure that there's nothing happening in my name. So you get those type of some companies like that. Now, typically it's going to be some type of identity theft, right? So you're talking about things that, and when I talk about identity theft, I'm talking about really just open up some type of money account in your name. So in order to open up a credit card, name, address, email address, something you can make up, and then social security number, date of birth. You can get at least $2,000 on a any type of credit card just that easy, just by having the information. And so it's easy for a hacker or a scammer, because sometimes we don't associate hackers with doing those type of scams, but they're living in the same world. They're getting the same information and creating only the same things, in my opinion. Maybe a hacker may do it at a higher value. You know, they may want to get the information of a business and maybe open up a business account and then spend the money on the business name. But your local scammer is probably trying to do the same thing. I just need enough personal information to go to um, American Express, give them the personal information, tell them to send it to my address. I got me a free credit card. I got me free $2,000. I'm gonna go and spend it on anything that I want, and the real person is not going to be notified until they start sending out late notices because the bill hasn't been paid. So you could do a identity fraud theft claim, but you know your credit is already going to take a hit. You know, it's a snowball effect. And do you pay that stuff off? Do you just kind of, I don't know. I would, I don't know. You want to just be up on top of that as much as possible. But if somebody opens up something in your name, make sure that you can get, sometimes the credit bureau, um, they will give you an email if you are, you know, registered with them, to say, hey, a new account has been opened up in your name. Are you aware? And if that's the case, then you know you could put the call in and say, put the call into that company and say, you know what, I didn't open this up. Go ahead and close that. So we talked about the fines, and of course the IP theft, intellectual property theft. Those are typically going to be your breaches. Now fines. Let's go. No, let's go back to fines. Fines are, you know, when you do, if you are a part of a data breach and you don't notify your customers that their information has been leaked out, they can be sanctioned by the government and fined a certain amount of money because they didn't put out a statement that this has happened. Please be on the lookout for any type of false claims or accounts opening up in your name. So those fines can happen, and they could be pretty heavy. So companies are typically, that's why you will wonder why a company would say anything about a breach, but they, under law, they have to at this point, because it's not like we're finding the people who are doing it. We just pretty much just want to know if, hey, we got to keep an eye out for anything. Now, normally, going back to this slide, in order to stop these things from happening, there's data breaches from happening, if we are held to any type of compliance standards, if we are compliant, it helps our chances of being more secure. It doesn't make us totally secure, but it does help our chances from being secure, because these compliances, these compliance and regulations that we're under will give us the guidance that we need, the best practices that we need in order to have security measures in place. Okay. Prime example, HIPAA, what we talked about, FERPA when it came to the federal education system. Um, we talking about PCI DSS when we're talking about credit card industries making any type of transactions online. If we follow those guidelines, those regulations, there's a good chance that we have things in place in order to handle a breach, but we're probably not going to be breached as easily. Okay. Data loss prevention. So earlier when I was talking about the metadata, I brung up data loss prevention, and data loss prevention is a system that we put in place similar to like IP on the on Security Plus. They're gonna call it IDS is a data loss prevention, also a IPS, something that prevents intrusion, is also a data loss prevention system. So DLP is a system similar to if you want to put it in like a Apple to Apple type thing, it's like an antivirus that you put on your computer. You will put that on. Honestly, to be honest with you, I don't have it on it. Yeah, this is a different computer. But anyway, you can have your antivirus have a section here directly for DLP. And now it's going to look for viruses, but at the same time, it's going to do scans over your files to make sure that there's sensitive data there. And if so, that they're tagged properly. And on top of that, if you try to send it somewhere, that it lets you know that you're trying to send that information out. Or if someone's trying to take that information, it stops that from going anywhere. So that's typically how DLP works as an appliance. Now, we typically, when you see DLP, you're typically going to see these type of things when it comes to data. Either data is in rest, it's in motion, or it's in use. So at rest means exactly what it says. It's not doing anything. We're not doing anything with it. It's just dormant. So all of I got this document open right here, but everything below it, I believe, is at rest. And what I mean by at rest, I don't have it open. I don't have it running or anything. So on the opposite end of that, the data in use would be this file right here. I'm actively using this file. I'm making changes to this file. So I'm active. That data is in use. Now the data in motion is the activity of me actually packing that data up, and typically emailing it to where it needs to go, or if I'm using FTP to transfer it between folders, maybe I do it that way. But that's data in motion, whether it's coming in or going out. So data at rest, not using it, not using it. It's here, but it's just resting. And then data in use, I'm actually actively using this data at this point. Now, those three things are normally going to be paired up with encryption. So we want to have encrypted data at rest, meaning we encrypted the whole hard drive to make sure that anything that's resting on the data on the hard drive is encrypted and protected. And then anything in motion, anything that we're sending over the internet, we're using HTTPS, and we're using some type of VPN or um, not IPS, what you call it, internet security to have some type of encryption on that data as it's moving across the network. Now, it's hard. You have some people saying that we can encrypt data that's in use, but in my opinion, we can't encrypt data that we're currently using and we're changing, because that, to me, that means that we're constantly changing the encryption as we're making edits to the data. So I think that is not, if we're using it, it's not encrypted. It's encrypted with the last piece of encryption that we put on it, but it's not encrypted again with the new encryption until we actually save it and then put it back at rest. All right, let's get to personal policies. So we talked about policies before. I want to say we talked about it yesterday. Acceptable use policies. This is where we tell people what we expect to have on our networks, what we expect to have on our computers. Um, Very easy policy to put out there. Very easy policy to have people accept and on their behalf and be able to follow those type of policies. Now, these are fairly new, but they are out here. Social media use and then analysis. So, not necessarily saying what you do on your personal social media platform, but how the policy will detail how will you view the company in your social media platform. So taking a selfie at work and showing the office space may be frowned upon, may be something that in that policy we don't want to happen. Maybe but you could be allowed to have um a selfie at the company's what's the thing we have at Christmas time, like a potluck or some type of gathering that we have outside of the business. We can have those things posted on social media. Maybe they don't want anybody at work to post anything outside of the company's profile. Maybe everything that's posted on social media needs to come through their profile, and they just want that control over their data. So just keep those things in mind when it comes to social media use. Not saying that they really want to control your particular profile, but if they see that you're posting things like, hey, take a look at this computer at work, I'm working on this, that, and the third, and you put it on your social media, they may be scanning your social media or looking at it, not scanning, but looking at it to see exactly, you know what, you're not supposed to be posting that. Go ahead and take that down, or you'll have some type of punishment. You also have policies on personal owned devices. That goes back to having a personal device, have a company email on the app. You know, then who really owns the phone? And if that's the case, if you own the phone, then you can you do whatever you want to do with the company's data that's on your personal phone? And so you get that whole dynamic there, and it gets kind of murky when you're talking about those type of stuff. Then finally, you got clean desk policies. This is exactly what it says, man. You know, before you actually leave the desk or your work spot, you want to make sure that you clean your desk as far as sensitive information as goes. So you have workers that come in and clean up after everyone leaves for the night. You don't want them to be able to see sensitive information, such as the pay grade for everybody that works there. If we had that printed out on our desk, then we're violating the clean desk policy. So we want to make sure that we have some form of a clean desk policy in our business. Now, user and role based training. This is typically going to revolve around security awareness training. Security awareness training happens every year. It should be an annual training, and this is typically where we're telling people to pay attention to phishing emails and don't fall for scams. It typically happens in October. Yes, happens in October. And we use that whole month to just kind of like promote security awareness training. Just be aware that people are trying to get information from you. Don't be so quick to just give out information. Not saying to be rude, but keep in mind that it takes everybody has to be secure in order to make the whole business secure. All right. So just keep those things in mind when it comes to security awareness training. Security awareness training typically happens on the computer, um, where we give someone maybe 5 or 10 minutes to watch a complete video on someone like me, just talking about what to look for when a phishing email comes in, how to create your password, um, what to expect when someone tries to tailgate you into the building. Those are typical training sessions that we have for Security Awareness Month. These phishing campaigns, you could typically find jobs that just hire on that. That's it's another silo of individuals that they hire for when it comes to job titles is security awareness training and like just running phishing campaigns. It's a wonderful place to be in. I was in there for just a little bit, then they switched me over to the side that I'm at now. But um, it's a fun. The only thing you have to do is just worry about people doing the training, and you don't necessarily have to worry about catching nobodies or anything like that. But anyway, moving on. Last slide here, we talking about the security awareness training life cycle. This is something that we put in place in order to build our users up as well as take in new users and let them know exactly how do we how do we train around here, what is our standards around in this business, and what are we trying to achieve when it comes to cybersecurity. And so always having a life cycle is always going to be some ongoing experience to um, build the 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 value of the customer or the clients up. So we want to make sure that we build their security awareness to be more, but we're always looking to add more people in, getting them adequate with what we're putting out there. They're understanding the material and then growing them as well as we all keep moving forward with just trying to make everybody a security aware about the business. All right. That's all I had for tonight. Any questions?
Or coding field with the things that we have going on that we just don't become dependent on it. Like I've seen my teacher literally, I don't know, I don't want to be like it's kind of a respect thing, but I don't be like I look down on him now, which I don't. But my teacher was going like presenting his stuff and he was using ChatGPT himself with his own code. So in my head, I'm like, should I just feel ashamed of having to use ChatGPT, knowing that as they tell us in the field, quote unquote, it's all about what you know, and you're not gonna have ChatGPT in the field and in these jobs and stuff.
I push back on that. Not having chat. Every time I send out an email now, I tell chat to read over my or correct my paragraph that I just wrote. Just because, if it's 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't feel like reading proofreading my paragraph. I'm gonna throw it in chat, let it go ahead and change it up. I proofread chat and see if that's the kind of way I want to sound in the email, and then I send it out. Or especially if I'm doing like a mass email to like 5,000 people. I don't want to be that guy, you know. Yeah, he don't read over his emails just because I missed an I or a D or a A. So No, I wouldn't feel bad about using chat or any other AI. If it's there, use it. Use it to your abilities. Like it's just like when you give Chat GPT your resume and say, "Hey, write this, rewrite my resume for this particular job," and you tell Chat to do that, and it does. It gives you all the bullet points that you want. The only thing that I would say is that there's nothing wrong with that. Only if you can speak to those bullet points. So if you can speak to those bullet points, put it on your resume. It's not telling any lie. You just went about it a different way to get the answers or get the wording in order for you to stand out in that job posting. So I wouldn't look down on anybody that use AI. It's not unless you're just to the point where you have no idea what you're doing and you're just manipulating AI to get further than what you want to get or what you should get. No, because once you come, if you work on my team, first thing I'm gonna tell you is that hey, if you ain't got the answers, man, go check the. We used to say go check Google, but I'm gonna tell you now, hey, use everything as your resource.
Yeah, because one thing I tell you for my discussion questions that I have, like I know the answer for it, but one thing about me that I kind of got to work on is I'm not a person that I can write a whole paragraph explaining something. I'm gonna
Mhm.
give it to you the best I can in 3 sentences. But professors be like, well, that's not enough. I want you to write a whole paragraph, or I want you to explain to me more of what's going on. And I'm like, I don't see why you want me to do all that if I'm literally telling you the entire thing in 3 sentences. That's so crazy. So I just use Chat GPT to say, hey, just lengthen this out and explain it longer, I guess, and then just post it that way. That's what I do.
And you get a lot of fluff, but that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the body of work, and sometimes that body is just kind of just a lot of fluff. Of do you have to say this? No, but in order to satisfy the word count, yeah. And I I appreciate it now. I'm in a doctor's program, and I appreciate it now because of how you could take a topic and really dive into the history, make sure that you really explain this particular part. If you're really trying to drive home a point, you can, separate a different part of the story or the topic and really drive that topic home before you put everything together. And so I understand a little bit more of the fluff, but I understand. I totally understand too. Where um, if you can condense it down to, hey, these are my main points, then that's really all I need. And those are time and places for those things too. Like a email would be perfect. IM messages be perfect at work. Hey, just give me what I need to solve this issue. I don't need a necessarily a whole novel to read about why this person can't log in. But anybody else got some thoughts on AI and that's some good conversation.
I do. I
In
saw.
terms of I'm sorry, go ahead.
You got it. I go after you. Go ahead. My bad.
Okay. In terms of cybersecurity, do you think there's any like cyber risks when it comes to using AI like repeatedly?
Risk, yes. I mean, when you think about it, so going back to black hat, gray hat, and then white hat. Black hats are malicious hackers. White hats are people who are going to protect the network, protect the goods. We are supposed to be the white hats, and then grays are kind of sitting in the middle. Well, black hats and gray hats could probably look at things that AI gives out, kind of like that standard, like hey, just like how Savala said, if you ask chat a particular, hey, how do we secure a server configuration wise, and it gives you 15 different things that we should all do, a black hat and a gray hat could probably look at those things and can ask chat the same question and then say, okay, chat. Well, and that's the thing. You can't ask chat how to hack or how to exploit a certain thing. Is right now from the last things that I've asked it, it doesn't allow you to do that, or it doesn't allow you to get an answer on that. But if you're savvy enough, you could probably say, okay, I could look at these 15 things and figure out how can I exploit those things because someone has probably are probably using chat as a way to defend their network. I would look at it in that aspect. Will I hold it to a high regard? Will I hold it real high? Maybe not, just because I don't think a lot of people are looking at AI as a security professional as of yet. So it could be used, but I don't think people, and that might be my ignorance too, where people are using it, but I don't think that people are using it just yet. Clark, you want to say something?
Yes, I was watching the interview. This is going back to the AI thing. Uh, there was a lady that wrote the movie Terminator and the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it was stolen from her, and they created a movie from it. But she was saying how, like you were saying, Mr. Mitchell, it's going to come a time in the future where the computers are going to outsmart us humans, and we could possibly be at war with them.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you think so? I mean, they already basically read the whole internet, and we're constantly adding to it, but they're constantly at this point just adding on more and more information. And you got to really kind of think about it. Like, eventually, they're gonna say, you know what? We done ran across these topics 150 million times. Humans
Mhm.
don't have nothing else to really kind of offer us. I think we got it.
Right.
And we got every concept that y'all can conceive. You know what? But given the data that we have processed over the years, I think we could survive without humans. It just makes sense. It makes perfect sense. I think with all the information, if robots was to really kind of just evolve, and really say, you know what, I don't think we need them anymore. I think if given the resources, the only thing we really need, going back to the Matrix, right? Because Matrix is one of my favorite movies. The only thing the robots really needed was just an energy source, which was people.
Mhm.
And if we can put them in a coma-like state and draw their energy, then we can live and do our thing wherever we're doing it. But we don't really need them. And to keep them happy, we'll just, put them in a deep sleep and let them live out their world while in a coma. Um, Not saying that that's going to happen, but I do believe that at some point in time, like they got the new technology now is like these nano robots that can you could put them in like a nasal spray and they go into your body, and it's basically like having a computer in your body to tell what type of symptoms you may have, or it's instead of doing the CAT scan, it could kind of do that within. And so I kind of looked at that and I was kind of apprehensive of like looking more into it. But if they're making computers that small to where now, they can, even understand the whole body as far as inside it goes and how does it interact with the climate. Um, Technology is just gonna, advance to the point where we're not gonna be able to keep up with it. Like y'all about to get me on some soapbox stuff, but literally, like,
I
huh?
like it. I like that conversation. Yeah, that's cool. That's an old military technology too, the nanotechnology. So,
I didn't know that.
hmm
See,
well, let me shut up. We go.
I look at it like it it really was far fetched to think that someone would be on a phone when I was growing up to where I could look at them and see what they're doing in the real time. And then I was thinking about it the other day, just kind of like we really don't see radio waves. Like we really cannot see the frequencies, but they are like the way radio waves work when it comes to the internet. Like we're literally I'm talking to people in Alabama from South Carolina, and we're doing things that we're thinking that is normal. But when I was growing up, I couldn't even, like, you'll be talking crazy stuff. And that's just in a matter of 20 to 25 years, maybe 30 years of involvement. Now, when I turn 60, 70, I can't like I really do imagine it's probably going to be something that I'm not even going to, I'm gonna just say, you know what, I'm gonna just stay home. I don't even want to bother with this. I also heard how they're looking to um, turn the internet into just something in your mind, going back to the Matrix, right? Where you, instead of going onto your computer and going into your favorite website, you it's all concept in your mind, and you hook up to the internet through some type of cabling system, or like the not like the VR stuff where it's projected to your eyes. It's kind of like these little head um stickies that stick on your skull or whatnot for your brain. And it reminds me of what they put on when you had to go into the Matrix or whatever. And then I heard how a technology is going to get so advanced to where instead of ordering things online and then expecting it to come in mail, you should be able to reach into the device and pull um the actual object out. And now, just so I could bring everything back, I was thinking about how we cannot see um, radio waves, but we know it's there, and we know that we're using it for some type of use because we've been using it for radio for hundreds of years. Now we're just using it for a different point of, video and whatever else entertainment that we do on online. But how far off is that concept of actually materializing something that's physical into something that we can't see back into something physical if we can manipulate the radio waves in some type of way? X. I know we talking crazy.
Okay. And I'm about to get out even more crazy, right? Okay, so follow me now. Follow me. Hold on. So you just got onto something talking about those invisible radio waves, right? So what if they already, like AI already taking over, but it's just like, man, I don't even see the use of taking over these people, right? So what if they just like manipulate us, like with the things that we see? Like, you know how you be like, I was talking about going to Chinese food, next Chinese food pop up on your TikTok, your feed, and stuff like that. But like Google always listening. You know how you be like that? So what if they just like found the frequency that nobody has developed a use for a device to actually see, and they already talking to each other like right now, So I got mine, and look, this is why I'll be like, y'all, this is why I should be included in stuff like this, because I go there, right? So here's my computer, and I'm talking to y'all on my phone. Like, what if my phone over here looking at my computer and they just having a full-on conversation, like, man, look at him. He over here again on this class. Man, do you know this man dropped me 3 times today? And they just having a full-blown conversation, and they just looking like, he's stupid. Watch this. I finna trap him. I'm gonna have his TikTok set to watch on stuff that he gonna get sidetracked on. He know he needs.
Wait,
And
I will say, speaking about exactly what you just said, there's an article that was just released where these people had to shut down. They had like they were doing some type of research project or something, and they were utilizing
two things of AI, and the AI were connected somehow. I don't know how to find the article. Why was there like they had to end the project because the AI started talking and communicating with each other on a secret wave that they were not able to understand?
Man, y'all stop. I gotta go to
They
bed.
develop.
Do that.
I'm so serious. They developed some type
That's
of
a real
like
thing.
frequency or wave or something that they weren't able to detect. I'm gonna find an article right now. Hold on.
I think they had to destroy the
Put it
technology or
in the
something like
chat.
that because they
Put
were
it in the
doing that.
Yeah. So they
Trying to be
see,
too
that's
smart,
what I'm
man.
saying.
Trying to be
See,
too smart.
Yep, it
I
said
think
okay.
they're a
So the
little bit
article
too
reads,
far.
it says Facebook abandoned an experiment after two artificially intelligent programs appeared to be chatting to each other in a strange language only that they could understand.
Mhm.
Mm.
All right, phone, computer, if y'all listening, please keep my navigation safe. I'm not worried about y'all, just in case y'all apologize to y'all equipment.
Hey, I I mean, like I
See,
said,
you real because I be cursing out my chat GPT when they want to act stupid when I got an exam due. I be cursing out my chat GPT bad. Me and her go together real bad.
And
I did.
they don't act like they don't hear me. I be like,
I'm just I don't know. I mean, they are. It is possible because, like I said, if they already know what we're giving them as far as the machine learning is concerned, what's to say that they haven't took what we already learned and just say, you know what? Um, if they really look at it in a different way, then it's probably a different. We could probably manipulate time and space this way, and probably be able to talk to different devices that way. I think I've seen some sci-fi movies like that to where or was that Black Lightning or something like that? It was one of those superhero movies where the technology was, or the person could talk to the technology. I think that was a Black Lightning, where the boy could turn. He had his special powers or whatnot to talk to the technology, and that's kind of weird. Or y'all would say something like that. It kind of gives me the creeps. But I mean, when you think about it, I mean, it could be.
All I'm gonna
It
say is my name Bennett, and I ain't in it.
They ain't looking at it like that. The computers they gonna hem you up too. I look at it like we've been using radio waves for forever, but now all of a sudden, in the last since the 2000s, like I remember watching cartoons when I was a kid, and y'all, I'm gonna tell my age, but anyway, it used to be a Spectre Gadget, and the Spectre Gadget had a little girl on there called Penny, and she had a smartwatch,
Yeah, I
and
remember.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? And it's like we used to watch that type of stuff, like, okay, that was just that. And then the Jetsons was just, people on a screen. That's never gonna really happen like that because phones were literally on the wall or with these long behind cords, and it just didn't work like that. And then all of a sudden, even when the first cell phone came out, it didn't accelerate it. It didn't accelerate. And then all of a sudden, '04 hit, and all of a sudden it's just kind of like every year it just takes leaps and leaps and leaps and leaps. And like even now, to go back to what we were talking about with the iPhone, now their whole thing with the iPhone 16 is AI. Like I don't I, I kind of felt like Siri was AI in the beginning, but I guess she's not. She was just a personal assistant. But I don't know.
Can I
The
have
mark of the
any?
beast and all that is I mean, I ain't getting into that.
let's not
Like,
talk about vendors now.
just saying.
I already started thinking like, so y'all know how we get more reliant on stuff as the years go on, and then kids like right now, that's the problem with kids just being social as is because they're so reliant on their devices. They don't know how to talk to each other. You get a party, they'll be on their phones talking to each other on the phone. Nobody's gonna hit a girl up in real life. Nobody, no girl gonna walk up to a boy and be like, "Hey, I like you," no more. They don't do that no more. So it could be like the part of the agenda to decrease, weaken us, decrease population. But you know what? I digress. I plead the fifth.
That I don't want to go that left, but and then how I started off the conversation by saying black people may think everything's so churchy, but it's like when you really look at it, and uh you know if we were talking about putting chips into everybody, you could solve a lot of issues. Don't get me wrong. You could solve a lot of, like, people wouldn't go missing anymore. Like the whole P Diddy joint, this sex trafficking joint, that can alleviate that type of stuff. But then when you look at it, like how we just you went from AI learning to machine learning to, yo, let's use nano computers or systems to go inside and keep track of people. Anyway, let me stop. Any other questions on AI? Any other comments? Y'all tripping. All right, lesson 14, summarizing security governance and concepts. This is where we're talking about more management style of Security Plus. What does a lot of our paperwork say? How do we set up our policies? How do we govern um, our users as well as the things that we want them to do in our business? And so this is what 14 is going to cover. Let's go ahead and jump right into it with policies, standards, and procedures. So policies are going to be your main documentation that's going to govern um, how we actually, or what we want to do with our data in our business. So it's going to say what we are going to create in a high level. And when I say high level, I mean from a 30,000 point view look down. You're not going to really see the minute things, right? You're going to see everything as a kind of a glance, right? So from a very high eagle's point, looking down, you're just going to set those policies up to say, hey, um, please act accordingly on our internet. Do not do anything that will cause any kind of criminal activities, things of that nature. Just leave it very high, because if someone does something that's very particular in a situation, it could be still covered by the policy and say, hey, we didn't really accept those type of actions on our network. Same thing goes for any other policy that really kind of, it doesn't necessarily get down to the nitty gritty, but it covers everything in a high level. Most of the policies that you'll see is the acceptable use policy. That's what I said that you guys should probably sign every year that you come back to school, saying that we're not gonna accept any type of criminal activities or any type of bullying on our internet. Things like that should not occur. And then you just kind of give a digital signature saying that you have read and accepted those rules. Um, but a lot of people haven't really implemented those things yet. The security policies are also going to be something that everybody should be able to acknowledge on a day-to-day basis, because the while it's you may have some things in the acceptable use policy that's covered by the security policies. The security policies will get more in depth with, hey, whenever you're sending an email, you'll use encryption. Whenever you're browsing the internet, please use encryption. Now, they don't say necessarily to use HTTP, because then we're just talking about web browsing. But if we're doing about going about connecting to a computer via the web, then we're talking about SSH, or secure file transport protocol. So all of those things can be summed up by saying, hey, whenever you're on the internet, please use secure encryption. And so now you don't have to necessarily safe for every situation, be secure. You can really get it at a high level. All right. Also, you can have business continuity and continuity of operation plans. This is just kind of on the business side of it, not necessarily the security side of it. But how do you keep the business running? Remember, if you can remember when we talked earlier in Security Plus, it I was forming it as it's more of a business certification versus a technical, uh, real heavy technical certification. It's about keeping your business afloat, and how do you do that? Um, so in order to do that, you got to understand what does the business do, and then how do you perform security on those actions. So those actions may be online, those actions may just be in devices, but it's up to us as security professionals to figure out what those things are. More importantly, when it comes to this business continuity, um, if we were to take away one of those elements, how do we actually keep it going? If you take away the internet service from your particular company, does your company cease to exist? Is it that's the only thing that you need to do in order for them to stop working? And if that's the case, then now you have a denial of service attack that can be self-inflicted or it could be city afflicted, right? So let's just say if you only got one internet provider in that city, and that city, that company cuts a fiber line, and then now nobody in the city has the internet, but your whole business thrives off the internet, and now it's a 2 week setback before you actually get back online. You could potentially go out of business in that time frame. So, a business continuity will allow you to set some type of plan up to say, hey, let's just put things in order for us to, if we're faced with dire times, that we can shift the business as we need to and continue to serve our customers. Same thing goes into disaster recovery, right? So whenever you have that disaster, forest fires or hurricanes, earthquakes, things that's, you know, the one thing that you want to do is make sure that human life is preserved first. But then if you're talking about a business, you want to make sure that the business is the data in the business is also preserved as well. But first, before anything, and I don't know if they're going to ask you at this level, but before anything, save the human life first. So in a case of a fire in the office, make sure everybody gets out before you start throwing out the computers, and making sure you save the computers from from the fire. Make sure you get the people out first. All right, make sure you get yourself out first, and then worry about the company's business later. Again, when we're talking about ransomware from last night, or day night before, we should have backups, and those backups should be able to help us out throughout any type of disaster recovery. All right, incident response. When it comes to policies, we need to have our incident response team understand how to actually, um, what are some steps that they need to take when it comes to responding to a incident. Every incident is different, but they should have some type of guidance that they should go about actually responding to incidents. Same thing with software development life cycles. If we're developing software in-house, then we need to understand um, the different stages that it could be in, and those stages go into a circle. So at the beginning stage there is a creation stage, but then at the end there's an improvement stage that constantly reverts back up to the top, where those improvements, whether it may come in a meeting, or if you're just looking at it from a standpoint of we're trying out new things in our application, those improvements then turn into creations almost, that you then go down the same cycle again, and just constantly always improving your application. Finally, we got change management. Change management, like I said, is a way in order for us to understand all the changes that is done to a system or a process in the business. Now, having a policy on that just kind of basically says that we're going to have a change management team, a change management system, but it doesn't necessarily go into depth of how do we actually hold those meetings, how do you put a change ticket in, and who approves. So those things are most likely being approached in the guideline section. So when it comes to guidelines or standards, those are more direct to the actual policy. So the policy will sit at a very high level, but then right under that, as we get closer to our objective, we get a better view of what's there, right? So if we're coming from a eagle's point of view and we dip down a little bit lower, we can now start seeing the buildings form out, the trees form out. We can see different things as we come down lower. And this is where our standards and our policy and our guidelines and procedures, they all start to come out in their places. So if we go back to our change management position and we say, hey, at the policy level, we will have change management, right? That's just it with that policy. But then as we start to come down and we start to write more things about the change management system, then we will say, hey, change management will only take place on Tuesdays uh, and every Tuesday of the week. And we need to have in tickets for each change management meeting by Friday, right? In order for it to be accepted on Monday and be able to be reviewed on Tuesday. Those things go into your standards and your guidelines. Policies are too high up in order to, really give out the particular ins and outs of the standards and the guidelines. Now, like I have here, they have recommendations and guidelines. And sometimes, given the fact of how the business is going and then certain software that you may be working with, you may have to go with certain recommendations, right? So, because when you start getting into more granular changes, then software may not be around in the next 10 years. And so you have to change that stuff out. But this is where the place where you could do those type of things, and they're not written in stone, almost like policies are really kind of set in stone. This is what we will have. Right now, standards sometimes in certain places, I know for the military, they carry that same type of weight of being a cross the board, no deviation standard, but a lot of times it still falls under a policy. Now, procedures are even more granular than standards and guidelines. They are step by step playbooks, so to say, or step by step cookbooks in order to actually show you how we actually do something. And so, some examples, or like how they have playbooks here. Um, some examples of that is onboarding and offboarding. How do we bring somebody in? So, what's the process? In a procedure, we'll know the process of accepting an application, calling someone for a first time initial interview, calling someone in for a first time sitting interview. Maybe we do a second interview. Maybe we go through offering them an offer letter. Once they accept the offer letter, how do we go and put them through orientation? How long will you be in orientation? In that process, that could be subcategory out to once an employee is in orientation. How do we give them equipment, PCs? When do we create their user account? When do we give them permissions? All of these things come into play. So it's not just the HR team developing these things. The IT team needs to be in play too, where once a person is accepted a position at the business, um, a ticket should automatically go to the IT team in order to create their account and give them a PC of some kind, right? We'll assign those. And so procurement needs to go involved. Maybe we need to buy them a computer. Maybe we need to get them not just a computer, but monitors and a mouse and keyboard. Um, Maybe they need a phone, a mobile phone as well. So all of these things we can list out in our procedures, and it those things can always change too. They don't have to necessarily stay in stone, because as we evolved as a company over time, we will change how we bring in people. Like for instance, imagine how much you had to change when we had the big COVID implementation and everybody had to stay home. Well, instead of you coming in and getting your equipment and sitting at a desk, I had to come up with a different procedure of how do we hire someone that's remote? How do we get them set up? What equipment do we mail out to them? How do we understand that they receive that package? And more importantly, if you really think about it, how do you set that person up on an internal network remotely if they never came into a business to actually, log in? Do you set them up on the internal network and then send it out, having them just type in their username and password that you give them, or do you join the computer to the domain after they have set it up? Do you It's a thousand questions you can ask with that. But anyway, it's all about how um, a company is actually set up in order to do all onboarding. That's just onboarding. Offboarding is just kind of the same thing, right? Where it's so many different steps that you could go in. How do you handle someone who gives you a 2 week notice versus someone who just up and quits? Someone who is disgruntled and then quits. Someone who's been escorted off the premises for fighting. How do you handle all of those things from an IT standpoint, but then from an HR standpoint too? How do you handle someone who unfortunately passes away? So all of these things go into our procedures when it comes to offboarding, background checks when it comes to onboarding. Um, what are we actually checking? How far do we go back with our background checks? Does our background checks really influence if we're going to hire them or not? Do we do background checks before we do a final offer letter? You know, do you if you do an offer letter and then do a background check and realize that this is someone that you might not want to go with, can you retract that offer letter? Service and software provisioning, that's just more of a, just how do you actually buy software? How do you go about telling how much money you can spend on software? Desktop deployment is really just understanding the procedure of, again, that onboarding system of how do we give a new user a desktop or a laptop? How do we deploy a tablet? you know Once you give that information, or once you get that device out, how are you tracking those things to make sure that they're not losing it, or it's not ending up in the wrong spots? They even got procedures on how to go live, right? If you're a part of the social media team at work, uh, there could be some procedures though on what are the procedures you check before you actually go live. Do you check your background settings to make sure that you're not giving away any more information than what you would like at work? Are you allowed to go live at work? Maybe not. Maybe you have to go to a secluded area and then go live. Do you even want to Does the company wants to be represented in it live? Because the thing about going live on social media is that uh, there's no takebacks. Yeah, there's no takebacks. Whoever sees it. And while you may be able to delete the video after the fact, again, it never really goes anywhere. And then again, you can't take away things that's live. So if people got it edged into their memory that you was wilding out on a live, then maybe we write something in the procedure. Maybe we only want certain people to go live. Um, After hour support. So there's a procedure for that. What do you do? How do you help somebody after your shift is over? After we're closed for the business of day? Should they receive any help, or should we, kind of cut the conversation short and say, you know what? I understand that you're working on this, but let's tackle this in the morning. There are ways of doing that, and employees have to understand that. Industry standards. So some standards, again, they are just as strict as policies. Your ISO 27000 series and the NIST 800 series is something that you'll see on a lot of applications, and these series are it's got to be a thousands of pages of different standards that a company will adopt in order to uh, uphold their IT posture. Okay, and a lot of times they use this to uphold their cybersecurity posture as well. And so it's not just enough for us to say, "Hey, we got a firewall, we got some antivirus, we got some people that's watching the logs, we good to go." Sometimes standards like these will go to the actual, where do you need firewalls at? Where do you need your endpoints at? How often do you want to keep logs? How often do we want to keep backups? It will go all the way into the details in some of these standards on how do we actually perform businesses, or what's the goal that we're trying to achieve, because that's a better way of putting it. You're not going to hit every goal every year, and sometimes, you know, you can have a goal. Let's say NIS 800, the 800 series, will say, "Hey, NIS 853, say, use two-factor authentication for every online account that you have." That sounds great, um, and it may be something that you want to implement. Now you have to step back as a company and say, "Okay, what accounts do we use online?" That's a daunting task, just to kind of figure out all of the applications that you use online. Then after you do that, how do we perform two-factor authentication for each and every one of these applications? So it kind of may give you some standards that is a little bit um, far-fetched, or a little bit, out of the reach of what's fathomable. But it's nice to have these standards here that we can work to. Now, some cases you ain't got no choice but to follow the standards, and that's PCI DSS. Because if you don't follow PCI DSS, which is dealing with credit cards transactions, your company does not have the right to offer any type of credit card transactions services. So if you're not PCI DSS, and you look at their standards and you're just not there. Let's just say you don't have a security awareness training, you don't have different IDSs, IPSs in between your servers in order to look for different types of attacks, and your auditor sees that you're not PCI DSS compliant. Then if you fail that compliance, that audit, then you can potentially lose the potential to have transactions on your website. Okay, so if we're making money on our website using debit cards and credit cards, but we're not PCI DSS compliant, then now we have to give that part up and make money another way, unless we become compliant with our standards. Okay. Now you can have internal standards, but a lot of the companies that I've seen, they would rather be ISO 27001 compliant and NIS 853 compliant. Um, and that's because these are pretty good standards across the board, and they pretty much cover everything that you want to have in your place of business. Your security controls will probably all come from either one of these different standards. Now, that's not saying that you won't get hacked if you are 27,000 compliant and NIST compliant. That doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean that you have taken the necessary steps to put the things in place in order to be secure as possible. Now, in some cases where if you don't meet those standards, and some of those regulations that are there in place for you to actually hold business, then you have some legal disputes that you have to go into. And so you want to make sure that you understand your industry, understand where you're working at, and then make sure that you are following by that industry's regulation. So, like Savala is working in a hospital setting, HIPAA should be one of the benchmarks that they should be following in some type of way. HIPAA, even if it's, they understand the whole HIPAA standard, but then they try to lock everything down and then make the different changes over time in order to make things better. But to at least be HIPAA compliant is the main thing. To make sure that people information when it comes to health and medical conditions are not leaked out in any type of form or fashion, and they are protecting that information by the standards that they have in that regulation. Now you have other regulations across the globe as well as different industries as well. So first things first, when it comes to privacy, and we're talking about, you have privacy laws here in the United States, but another big one that you're going to hear about is GDPR, and that's going to be in the UK. GDPR is very big over there in the England, um, the England, London area, and they are very serious about and information and personal information that's being put out there, and then companies keeping that information. The problem with the US sometimes is that they get information about a individual, and then they don't tell you that they keep that information for maybe ever, right? And sometimes you could see um emails from companies that you probably contacted years ago that still has your information, and sometimes they put you in a mailing list, and then all of a sudden 7 years later they send you an email saying, hey, let's catch up. So GDPR, one of the big things that they have is the right to be forgotten. And I think after 3 or 4 years, a company is mandatory, has to like wipe your information, all of the personal information that they gathered from you. They have to delete that from that database in order for them to be to uphold that privacy law that they have in place. That's something that we don't have here in the United States as of yet. We'll see how that goes. That's why the TikTok thing was um, it was so big as far as who could see what in the beginning, right? When they were saying that it was a China app and China had access to PII, everything like that, that went into um, that privacy realm. But see, we're not covered like they are in the UK. And so really we gave our information to China willingly just to use the app. And so you can't really, cry about it now if they're going to do anything about it. Is we willingly gave that information up. But anyway, I digress. The Another sector or industry that's covered about another regulation is education. The main thing that you want to know when it comes to education is FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So this is going to be covering you guys right now when it comes to being in school, and what information do you want to really cover and make sure that it doesn't get out about you being in school, not just your school records. What are you making on your courses, but think about, you know the school has your social security number, and for some cases the school may have some medical records on you too if you went to the school nurse, or if you play a sport, you probably took a physical maybe, and they have that information too. All of those things are on a record somewhere, maybe on a server somewhere, that could be, you know, useful to a hacker, so to say. But it's not just your name and address and then first of kin. It could be more in depth than that. And if you really think about it, I'm not too sure, but back when I was going to school, my parents had to actually write down their information on like parent loans and stuff like that. So it could it could be more information on other people that is kin to you, um, versus it just being you yourself. So just real quick, uh, can anybody like really attest to, or have you guys thought about the HIPAA laws that you guys may be under, given the fact that you're in school and maybe went to the school nurse, maybe play a sport or something like that?
I hear HIPAA every day, so I'm already used to it.
Yeah. Another one. Now I'm not too sure, but I would guess, and only because I'm talking from another experience, but I would assume the fraternities and the sororities that you're in, you gave a good bit of information to be a part of the membership there too. Now I'm not saying that you gave Social Security because I don't know, but I know in order to have that, trying to think, I know maybe. I don't want to speak too much on something that I don't know, but I know that when you start really thinking about all of the extracurricular activities that you guys may have, is that you're not only just giving out information to the school, but in the surrounding things that come into the school as well. Um, so we already talked about HIPAA, FERPA, GLIBA. So GLIBA is going to be the Graham Leach Bliley Act, and this is going to be covered by the banking systems. Um, so the banking, when you really think about um, any one of these sectors, this is typically where you're going to see a lot of the PII, the personal identifier information, come out in more cases than most, in more industries than most, because think about any type of loan that you got to get, they're automatically asking for a security, social security number. Any credit card that you get, it's going to be a social security number. Um, just about everything at a banking system is going to be very sensitive if someone else gets their hands on something that has to do with their bank account number and then their personal identifiers that allow them access to that banking and that banking account. That's why it's so important to understand that being under these standards will allow people to have some type of peace when it comes to putting their money into a particular bank and being able to understand that it's the money that they put there is going to have the integrity and not be changed over time without their, you got to have some type of backing if something, something was to happen to a bank where the money, let's say if you put 4,500 in there and then all of a sudden they say you didn't have 4,500, you have $450. um there's a type of integrity that needs to be there, to where if that was to happen and they know that it's on them, that they will be able to reimburse you up to the last full amount that you had. This is covered under the Grand Bleach Bliley Act. Now, when we're talking about, now we already talked about PCI DSS, which is payment card, but when we're talking about government security, we talking about FISMA. FISMA is going to show that everybody who's doing any type of business with the government, whether it be contracting or working directly in the government, whether it's the armed forces or at the Pentagon, FBI, what have you. If you have some type of eagle on your ID card, you're probably going to be under the FISMA Act. Now, this is the most strict um, um, industry that I know when it comes to cybersecurity. They're going to make you do your training. You're going to have mandatory training, and I want to say that mandatory training is monthly, and then everything down to the passwords is going to be um, full blast. So you're talking maybe 16 characters long with no words, all different letters, no corresponding word letters, so no double S's, no double T's or anything like that. It has to be different letter or number each digit for 16 of them. And then you're going to change that every 90 days. So they stay strict on those type of things because if not, it's easy for them to, if not, then it will be easy for someone to get to top secret information and put that information out. I could just imagine if someone was to put out any information on Area 51 and it be legit. And so I can see the government having a fit. But anyway, moving on. Now, when we're talking about governance and accountability as far as the data is concerned, we have certain government, we have data roles that we have in place for directors and managers, and they are typically going to be your owners of the data. So, what I mean by that is that let's take a look at my directory again. And let's just say if this is the company, and we go to our program files, and let's just say all of these files here belong to different departments in our company. Well, we will say the Microsoft folder is owned by Lee, and everything that's within this folder I own. Now, I may not have created everything because I'm the director of this department, but everything that if if it becomes missing or encrypted or it changes in any type of way, I'm the one that's going to be held responsible because I'm the owner of this folder. But I give all the permission to my coworkers who work under me, permission to create and put things in here, take things out as they please. So as a owner of it, I just take responsibility of it, ownership of it, but not necessarily create different things in it. Now, as a controller, I'm I necessarily don't know what's in these groups or care what's in these groups. But what I do as a controller, I am a person who controls the computer on which the information sits. So I got to make sure that the computer is up to date, that it's actually running, that it's available for people to actually get to. That's from a controller standpoint. A processor is going to be your typical creator, someone who could put information in and bring information out, right? Um, they're going to be creating the documents that's there. Then your custodian is going to be similar to your controller as far as making sure that the system is up and running, but they're also going to answer any type of questions that come along with it. Any type of tickets that need to be open, your custodian can take care of that and make sure that we are running on a daily